Hello and welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Tanner McGrath. We're here to dive into Friday's baseball slate, the final Friday of the 2024 Major League Baseball regular season. Full 15-game slate, afternoon contest at 2:20 p.m. between the Reds and the Cubs. I'm going to talk about in my best bet section. First, just want to take care of some housekeeping issues, talk about the goings on over the past week because it has been an exciting final week of the regular season. The White Sox refusing to move off of 120 losses, sweeping the Angels at home, refusing to break the tie with the 1962 Mets for most losses in a Major League Baseball regular season. Their final three games are going to be at Detroit, likely to break that record, but refusing to do it in front of home fans, showing a lot of resilience in that series. An emotional final game yesterday in Oakland. I watched the entirety of that contest. I was definitely cutting some onions while that game was going on. Much more emotional than I expected to be. I've never been to the Coliseum. I'm on the other side of the country. Have some good memories, though, watching games at the Coliseum. Tanner, if you have any favorite memories from the Coliseum, I'd love to hear those from you as well. But I think the one that comes to mind for me is Dallas Braden's perfect game. I was watching that in college with all of my roommates, none of whom were baseball fans. But I think when people see a perfect game going on, you just get sucked in. And I remember watching the final three innings of that game with them on Mother's Day as Dallas Braden finished it off, then went over and hugged his grandmother. That was a very emotional moment. I believe it was 12 years ago. And I still remember it very vividly. Just like people who were not baseball fans getting sucked into the moment. So feel awful for the fans in Oakland. The plan that they have for Sacramento is entirely disastrous, and John Fisher can fuck off and go to hell. But yeah, I just feel for the fans and all the images emerging out of there the past couple days with the groundskeepers filling up the dirt and the water bottles, and just a lot of emotions going on in Oakland. So really feel for the fans. If you're an Oakland A's fan listening to this podcast, I feel for you, and I'm very sorry for the loss of your organization. But on the playoff note, as we head into the home stretch here, Yankees, Dodgers both clinched yesterday. All six divisions are now locked up. Just wild card positioning left to play for because all four buys in either league are locked up as well. The Dodgers and the Phillies, the Yankees and the Guardians will have the two buys in the NL and the AL respectively, but they are still battling with one another for seeding. So even though those four teams have qualified, still neck and neck with one another in terms of number one overall seed in their respective leagues throughout the playoffs, basically playing for home field advantage in the NLCS and ALCS respectively. Qualifying scenarios the rest of the way. In the American League, the Tigers and the Royals both have a magic number of 1. The Twins with a tragic number of 1. The Twins need to win out. They need one of Kansas City or Detroit to lose out in order to make the playoffs, because I believe both those teams have the tiebreaker over Minnesota. So Kansas City, Detroit can both qualify on Friday night, either with a win or a Twins loss. And if so, that would set up a hangover game for either of those teams on Saturday. So keep an eye on the Twins, the Royals, and the Tigers. If either of those teams or if any of those teams win or lose, they are going to have a potential hangover game on Saturday. So keep an eye out for that. The Mets and Braves, though, in the National League, going to be forced to play a doubleheader on Monday after getting rained out the past couple days in a very avoidable scenario in Atlanta. Arizona is in if they sweep the Padres this weekend. If they only win 2 of 3, it will come down to that doubleheader on Monday to see if one or both the Mets and the Braves get in. But yeah, that's basically the scenario to watch for the weekend. The Diamondbacks, I believe their magic number is 5. If you want to combine the Mets, Braves losses and their wins, but if they just sweep this series this weekend, they're in automatically. Tanner, any thoughts on the wild card hunt rest of the way over the final 3 days of the season, and any lingering thoughts from that A's game from yesterday? Did you get to enjoy any of it?
I watched the whole thing as well. Also was just devastated by the end of that game and the manager's speech and whatnot. I've never been to the Coliseum either. I've heard only great things. There's a metro that goes straight to the Coliseum. The food is always cheap. There's always open seats. And I miss watching Barry Zito pitch. He was probably one of my favorites growing up. In terms of final wild card and playoff clinches, can't believe what the Tigers are doing. This has just been a remarkable run. It defies all logic, and they pulled off a comeback win last night to go 9-1 in their last 10 games. So it'll be interesting to see how they play in their wild card series. Can you imagine if they didn't deal Flaherty at the deadline? I mean, this Tigers team could be really dangerous in the postseason, but it'll also be nice to see Skubal finally get to show out in a playoff game. I'm sure he'll pitch amazing after he's pitched all year, but otherwise just excited for the final week of baseball. Is always crazy. You know, so many things you have to watch and follow, and it's just so exciting. You don't know what's going to happen. And I'm mostly excited to get playoff baseball underway. So let's get into the show.
Yeah, I said it was the final payoff pitch of the 2024 regular season. That is not true because we will be back here on Monday, and there are regular season games technically on Monday with the Mets and the Braves. We will probably do a combined playoff preview and Mets-Braves doubleheader preview. We're going to figure out the scheduling in terms of that, but this is not technically, I don't believe, our last payoff pitch of the regular season. But let's get to our final best bets for a Friday of a Major League Baseball regular season. I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Reds in that 220 game. Now, they've yet to confirm their starting pitcher. We have 4 teams who have yet to confirm a starting pitcher today. The Reds, the Tigers, the Dodgers, and the Mariners as of 10 a.m. Eastern time. None of those 4 teams have confirmed a starter. I assumed it was going to be Nick Martinez going for the Reds. That's why I bet them. I don't know if he was in there and got pulled out of official probables. I don't think he was ever actually officially confirmed. He hasn't started in a week, and I expect him to opt out of his contract. I wonder if there's a dispute going on between Martinez and the Reds about his desirability to pitch today over the final 3 days of the regular season. If he's going to opt out, I wouldn't want to pitch either. We saw a very similar situation happen a couple years ago with Carlos Rodon and the Giants down the stretch. He didn't want to make his final start for the Giants. It was in the final 2 or 3 days of the season there as well. But if Martinez goes, I give him a pitching advantage over Jameson Taillon. I think Martinez has been tremendous, if not maybe the most underrated pitcher in baseball. I've basically been betting him every time out in the rotation as of late. 3.3% walk rate. That's the second lowest in baseball behind George Kirby. 96th percentile in chase rate, 98th in hard hit rate, 88th in barrel rate. So not only does Nick Martinez have elite command, doesn't walk anybody, he also avoids barrels, and he gets guys to swing and miss at pitches outside of the zone. He's turning into Zach Greinke at age 35. I don't know what the Reds did with him, but he looks absolutely tremendous. And he has, especially over the past month, he's just been rolling. He's spotting everything he wants, hitting every location he wants. You look at the underlying metrics, 3.1 expected ERA, 3.5 bot ERA, 107 pitching plus. Jameson Taillon, 3.9, 3.7, 102. So Taillon, I think, generally a guy who's underrated. Nick Martinez, even more so. Just have to mention, he hasn't pitched since last Friday. They haven't announced him officially today, so keep an eye to see whether the Reds do announce him in or out. I made Cincinnati about plus 101 for the first 5 innings, plus 110 for the full game if he's in there. So I'd bet those to plus 110 and plus 118 respectively. And if they do go with a bullpen game instead of Martinez, I still expect to be getting basically a break-even price. Those numbers won't be getting an edge, but a break-even price.
Hey,
and I'll consider
Sean,
to buy out at that point. Go ahead.
I saw Hunter Green listed at some places. Is there any chance he starts?
No, I don't believe so. I from what I gathered, it was either Martinez or a bullpen game.
Okay.
Green last one on the 22nd. He went 3 innings coming off of the IL. So I guess there's a possibility that he could lead a bullpen game or like pitch the bulk of a bullpen game. But yeah, I think it's generally going to be Martinez or like 6 innings of bullpen. Even if Green goes, I don't think it'll be more than one time through the lineup.
I like the Reds either way. I'm with you all the way. No matter who starts with. Martinez is great. Green is great.
We talked about their bullpen being underrated all year.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. It's a top 5 bullpen. Nobody talks about
it. So Tanner, go ahead and give me your best bet for Friday slate.
Yeah. Speaking of playoff wildcard implications, I'm going to go with your New York Mets on the money line at the Brewers, about minus 115-ish, maybe looking for minus 120 or better. 2 things off the bat here. First, motivation. Mets are still battling for a wild card spot. They're a game ahead of the Braves. They are tied with the Diamondbacks. While the Brewers are basically locked into the 3 seed in the National League, I think we know who has the motivational advantage here. The Brewers. Oh, the second thing, rest. The Mets had an off day yesterday after the Braves game was postponed, And that game was postponed on Wednesday night, too. So it wasn't a surprise where they had to hang around the field all day. It was a true rest day. Meanwhile, the Brewers, they played a tight game on the road at Pittsburgh, won, I think, 5-2. They used 4 relievers, including Devin Williams, who threw 21 pitches. And then they traveled back to Milwaukee for this game. So I like the situational spot for the Mets. Next thing is Sean Manaea starts for New York and has really been a stud since he ditched a bunch of pitches and basically leaned into his sinker, sweeper, changeup mix. I mean, since the start of August, we are talking 72 innings, 2.6 ERA, 3.2 expected FIP, a 30% strikeout rate. I've never seen that from Manaea, I feel like, compared to a 6% walk rate. His ground ball rate is up. His hard contact rate is down. He's been really great across the board ever since he kind of tinkered with his mix. And I'm fine fading Frankie Montas, who goes for the Brewers. I'm actually relatively high on him compared to the market. I think he's got velocity. I think he could be good, but the results aren't there for him in Milwaukee. He has a 4.5 ERA. He blew up against Arizona in his last start. A few too many walks lately too. I think he's been a little too erratic. He's had at least 3 in 4 of his past 7 outings. Meanwhile, the Brewers are in their worst split against Manaea, the lefty. They're about 7% worse against that side than against righties. And over the past month and against Southpaws, they've been a bottom 10 offense, a 78 WRC+. The Mets offense has scuttled recently. I don't know, is Lindor available for this game? I would hope so. But either way, I like the situational spot for the Mets. I like Manaea. I am fine with the bullpen and defensive matchup. And I like the Mets here as short road favorites.
Yeah, it seems like Lindor, there's a chance he might be available. I don't know how he's feeling after 2 additional days off, the team just sitting around. Montas did try to change his pitch mix with the Brewers. As you said, the results haven't necessarily come with it. But yeah, they really have no motivation to push their bullpen heavily over the final 3 days. This is a team who Pat Murphy has been very aggressive with his bullpen throughout the year. It seemed like it might be tough for them to make it through a whole season using the bullpen as aggressively as they did. Devin Williams came back at a very opportune time. He was awesome down the stretch. I doubt you see him today, though. Why would they pitch him today?
Absolutely, especially after throwing 20 pitches yesterday. No way, no chance.
They can't move the needle at all over the next 3 days. So they're literally are completely disincentivized from like trying to use their best players and tiring them out for a wild card series that's going to start on Tuesday anyway. So yeah, key reliever is going to get rested here for the Brewers against the Mets over the final 3 days. There's a chance these teams end up playing one another in that wild card series on Tuesday anyway. If things shake out, depending on the Diamondbacks, I think it's more likely, given the tiebreaker scenario, that the Mets end up playing the Padres, but there is a chance of a Mets D-backs or Mets Brewers series. I think it would be Mets Brewers. Yep. So let's go to our favorite underdogs. We're going to skip Fade the Public today. We do have one consensus dog and then another dog I like, a third dog I'll mention as well. Our consensus underdog, though, the Colorado Rockies at plus 165 against the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is technically the Dodgers' hangover game. They qualified last night, beating the Padres, winning 2 out of 3 in Los Angeles. Celebrated after, had to get on a plane, go to Coors Field. Now, in recent weeks, I've talked about teams going to Coors Field for game 1 of a series. There is clearly an adjustment that is not factored into the betting markets, I don't believe, because since 2005, there's like a 23%, or there's I think it's a 15% ROI. It's very high for teams in the first game. It's 8% for the Rockies as a dog, game 1 at Coors Field. Shrinks to 1% as a dog in games 2 through 4 at home. But then I also put in my article on Tuesday, the system for the final week last week, bad team versus good team. If you have a sub 40% win rate and you're playing a team with a winning record in the final week of the regular season, historically since 2005, 23% ROI across about 200 games. The Marlins won 2 of 3 against the Twins. They were one of the teams that popped for this week. The Rockies game against the Cardinals qualified yesterday because the Cardinals were above 500 when they played. That was a win. So I believe the system is now 3-1 thus far already in the final week. The final 6 games that will trigger are the White Sox against the Tigers for 3, and then the Rockies at home against the Dodgers for 3. So this fits multiple Action Lab systems, like 3 or 4 different systems I have set. I projected it closer to plus 150. Plus 165 was the best available number out there. The Dodgers did switch their expected pitcher from Tony Gonsolin to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, but they have not confirmed him yet. So I don't know what the Dodgers are going to do in terms of pitching. There's a chance after celebrating yesterday that somebody from their lineup sits. I know they're still battling with the Phillies for the number 1 seed, but if somebody's going to sit, it's probably going to be today or Sunday. So Rockies, for me, Tanner, you're joining me on Colorado. What did I miss in my breakdown?
You said a lot of it. And look, there's almost zero. I at least have almost zero on the field reasoning for this pick. We don't even know who's starting for the Dodgers. And I don't care. This is essentially an autoplay for me. I mean, you talked about the Dodgers hangover game. They sealed the division last night. And they played all 3 of those games against the Padres late. And so now they travel overnight from LA to Denver. And, the Rockies, just in general, they're always awesome as home dogs. I always talk about just spam betting the Rockies as home dogs in Denver. The Coors voodoo is always alive. I mean, you talked about the game yesterday against the Cardinals. They pulled off an incredible comeback win as home dogs yesterday. They were down 8-5 in the 8th inning and went back-to-back-to-back 2-out doubles for a 5-run 8th. It was spectacular, but it's also like, this is what the Rockies do. Yeah. They're the most profitable MLB home underdog since 2005. They're 314, 346 for 52 units of profit, 8% ROI. They are
45 units of that is in game 1 of the series. As a
yeah,
dog.
exactly. They're also 33 and 37 as a home dog this year. It's 10% ROI or a 14% ROI plus 10 units. They are 115, 126 as a home dog since the start of 2021. That's a 14% ROI. And they always play the Dodgers tough at home. Since the end of the COVID-shortened season, they're 9-12 against the Dodgers at home. They're huge dogs in every game. They're up about 4 units, 17% ROI. Also, I think the Rockies are starting Cal Quantrill, who is somehow a better pitcher at Coors than on the road. 4.3 ERA at Coors, 5.1 on the road. His underlying profile doesn't really match that, but his ground ball rate is higher at home, which I think is really crucial at Mile High because you can't give up fly balls because they're either going to go over the fence or into that rangy outfield. He's pitched against the Dodgers 3 times this year with the Rockies, won one of the games. He didn't blow up in any. I think that's the key, 4 earned, 3 earned, 4 earned, respectively. The one game he pitched at Coors against the Dodgers, 3 earned runs across 5 innings. I think we could have enough there. Ultimately, I love the spot for the Rocks catching over plus 150 on the money line. It's an auto bet for me. I have to take it.
Yeah, similar for me. I also fired on the Pirates against the Yankees. Yankees in a very similar situation, qualified last night against the Orioles, ended up celebrating. They do not have to travel. That is the differential. They get to stay at home, but they are playing Jared Jones and the Pirates. The Pirates have been better against lefties than righties all year, so they're in their better split against Rodon. And if the Yankees are going to sit guys, I'd say it's likely today or Sunday. So somebody, probably Judge or Soto, will sit in that Yankees lineup. Still battling for number 1 overall seeding with the Guardians, but I think there's a chance they take the foot off the gas slightly. Today, unfortunately, though, the line for the Pirates was not as valuable as the Rockies money line. I made the Rockies about plus 150, took plus 165. I think I made the Pirates plus 150 also, but the line is closer to plus 155 or plus 160. So not quite as much value on Pittsburgh, but would recommend a small book for similar reasons as the Colorado play. The other underdog I like, the Baltimore Orioles at plus 145 against the Minnesota Twins. Now, Baltimore was on the other side of that Yankees game last night. I suppose you could say that they have nothing to play for at this point, need to rest guys going into Monday. However, the Minnesota Twins last night did everything they could to avoid a series loss to the Miami Marlins. They threw 8 different relievers yesterday. They threw 6 or 7 the day before. 7 of their 9 relievers now have thrown 30 pitches or more in the last 2 days. I have not seen this all year from any team. 5 of their relievers have pitched back-to-back, and every single one of their 9 relievers, if they pitch today, it would be their 3rd appearance in 4 days. So I don't know if they're going to make roster moves to get fresher arms onto this roster. They do have Pablo Lopez starting today, so if they're going to have a guy pitching after their bullpen gets taxed to potentially go into the 7th or 8th inning, it would be Pablo Lopez. But I still think given that bullpen tax, the Orioles are the value side of this matchup, would take them down to about plus 140, plus 135. I just want to reiterate, 7 of the 9 relievers in the Twins bullpen have thrown more than 30 pitches in the past 2 days. 5 have pitched back-to-back. And for all 9, this would be their 3rd appearance in 4 days. I've not seen a bullpen this exhausted the entire season. They literally threw all the stops against the Marlins to try to beat them yesterday, and their offense couldn't come through in extras. So
All that
bullpen,
to miss the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had such
tragic
high hopes for the Twins this year too, and they just collapsed down the stretch. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Brutal.
Yeah, Joe Ryan got hurt. Buxton got hurt. Brooks Lee was on and off the IL. Royce Lewis can never stay healthy for a full year. So, all of the worries that we had about this team from an injury perspective came to fruition. Everybody told me coming into the year the Orioles were a lock to go over 91.5 wins. The Minnesota Twins were a lock to win the AL Central. Well, neither of those came true ultimately. I trusted the math going against both of those opinions. I needed an utter collapse from the Orioles in the second half to cash that under 91.5, but we got it to the window. So, yeah, I'd say, the biggest hold through nose bets from the start of the year, the Oakland over, the Baltimore under, anybody but Minnesota to win the Central. Largely for most of the year, the Tigers under. They surged past that at the end, but for most of the year, that looked like a good bet. So, yeah, most of the bets that looked contrarian or hold your nose-ish at the start of the year, I think ended up being the right bets in the end.
I got Baltimore late, and I have under 90.5. So I need them to lose one of these final 3.
Yeah,
so that'll be fun.
You're not the only one I know who I think BJ might have 90.5 as well.
Yep.
So I'm rooting for you guys to potentially get one of these final 3 here in Minnesota from this Twins team that is DOA and could be especially DOA the next 2 days if they lose today, because they will be officially eliminated with one more loss or wins, to reiterate, from the Tigers and the Royals. Everybody's tragic number at 1.
I'm not complaining about any of my futures though, because I still have a Scooble 22-1 ticket on Cy Young, and your Brewers, I got them 8-1 in the NL Central. So beautiful year from a long shot perspective, I would say.
Yeah, Guardians, I believe 4-1 AL Central we cashed as well. And I got to shout out Jim Turvey, because Jim Turvey 9-1, Angels exactly 5th place in the AL West. Legitimately, like, one of my favorite dumb prop bets of the year. Just such a sharper way to bet on Oakland and against LA than just taking anybody's win total over or under. 9-1. Crazy for Angels to finish at exactly 5th. That's been good for a couple weeks now. Tanner, I want to get out of here with some final bets. This might have been my best bet initially. The line, though, has moved up a little bit closer to where I projected it. I made the Giants minus 140 in both halves against the Cardinals. The Cardinals coming off of that series in Coors, that bad loss yesterday in Coors. Neither of these teams technically have anything to play for. 2 good bullpens. I like the under 7.5, but we also both like the Giants. Are you a Landon Routt fan like I am?
I am. And before I get into him, I also just want to mention that you talked about the adjustment going to Coors Field for the first game. I also think there might be an adjustment going away from Coors Field.
I want to look into this in labs. Yeah.
And so the Cardinals played, they blew the game in Colorado yesterday, then flew to San Francisco. Traveling around the West Coast, is much more of a drag than traveling around the East Coast. And the Giants had an off day. So,
especially when you're eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think I would normally power rate the Cardinals bullpen higher than the Giants, but the Cards, they battled yesterday. The Kyle Gibson lasted only 4 innings. They used 4 relievers, and these are 2 scuttling offenses. But again, I wouldn't be surprised to see kind of a Cardinals letdown after you get the Coors Field boost. The balls aren't going to fly as far. And I guess what this handicap really comes down to is, as you mentioned, the starting pitching matchup. Miles Mikolas, ERA north of 5 on the year, 6.4 over his past 5 starts. The last time he faced the Giants, he allowed 4 runs across 6 innings with 3 strikeouts and 2 walks. He doesn't have the swing and miss stuff. His command tends to be pretty good. It's not showing up in his bad ball profile for me. Hard hit rate pushing 40% over the past 5 starts. He's allowed 9 barrels in those 5 starts. That's a 12% rate. That's too many barrels. And like you said, I think we're Landon Raup fans. He is an elite stuff guy. 3+ pitches, 103 on his sinker, 114 on his sweeper, 150 on his curveball. And he's been throwing more of those curveballs lately too, while throwing a fewer sweepers. He generated 8 whiffs on 28 curveballs against the ever-disciplined, ever-elite Padres just 2 starts ago. He's been in the bullpen most of the year, but in 3 starts so far, 15 innings, 2 earned runs, 10 strikeouts. He can be erratic, will walk a few too many guys, but he also forces a ton of ground balls, like 47% ground ball rate, thanks to his sinker-heavy approach. So, yeah, I think he's a guy worth buying. I'm willing to buy him and sell the Cardinals in a tough spot on Friday afternoon, and I'm sure you agree.
Interesting transition going on for the Giants. Hayden Birdsong, 111 stuff plus. Raup, 124 stuff plus. Mason Black is a stuff plus guy too. They're moving away from these command-oriented guys, ground ball-oriented guys, and primarily like pitch to contact Logan Webb types, and moving more towards these stuffy, like shaky command guys. So just an interesting philosophical change, I think, for the Giants.
Didn't the Red Sox hire...
Ahead,
wasn't Andrew Bailey in San Francisco? The Red Sox hired away their pitching coach, I think. Could that be the change?
Yeah, it's very possible.
Yeah.
I would think that that's more so like a multi-year like draft kind of approach.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because it's hard to like immediately see
make off-season changes that drastic. Yeah.
Right. Within 1 year.
And all these guys have been developed in the system too. You're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I've been betting on Birdsong a lot, even though the location plus numbers for both him and Raup are below 100, but their stuff is so good. Their pitch modeling metrics come up north of 100, which is very uncommon. Typically, you see guys like Jameson Taillon has like an 85 stuff plus, but a 107 location plus. So his pitching plus is well over 100. It's like 102. But if you flip those, if you gave a guy a 107 stuff plus and an 85 location plus, the pitching plus would be like 92. Location drives so much of the pitching plus figure, but the Giants guys have so much stuff and below average command, their pitching plus number is still creeping over 100. So it's odd because that's not what I'm accustomed to. I'm accustomed to seeing the Giants with guys who have 85 to 90 stuff plus and good command, not vice versa. But yeah, I've been betting on Raup. I've been betting on Hayden Birdsong. I've been betting on Mason Black a little bit. I think all 3 guys certainly have potential for the Giants moving forward. And it gives
today's
them some
matchup
options too. If they want to trade Blake Snell in the offseason, just gives them some options if they want to like move off of the build they currently have.
Today's matchup is a good example of that phenomenon you were talking about. Mikolas, 88 stuff plus, 109 location plus, 103 pitching plus. But Raup, 124 stuff plus, 97 location plus, 104 pitching plus. So if you go by that model, we got the starting pitching advantage. So
yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and by body ERA, Mikolas projects really high, but the past 2 years, just look at his expected ERA, his actual ERA. They flipped. I think he had a 4 or 5.4 expected last year and like a 4.5 actual this year. His actual ERA is north of 5. His expected ERA is in the mid 4s. So sort of pitching around a 5 ERA type level the past 2 years. I think you can justify those more so than his pitch modeling metrics. I got a couple more, then we'll get out of here, see if Tanner has anything left. Twins and Orioles, the under 8.5. I know I talked about all that Twins awful bullpen usage, but the weather here, the wind blowing in, Pablo Lopez starting. I still think this game can land under 8.5. It also gives us some protection too, in case the Orioles do end up sitting guys. This total will definitely move down. The total I prefer though, the Diamondbacks and the Padres under 9. I projected this at 8.1. This was listed at 9 last night when Martin Perez was expected to start for San Diego. It didn't really move. The money line adjusted after Darvish was announced officially. The total did not move down. I was very surprised to see that. It did move down this morning, or at least a little bit overnight. But again, I made this to 8.1. I'd bet the under 8.5 to about minus 105 to minus 108. Tanner, anything else for you on this full 15-game Friday slate?
Nope, I'm good. I love my 3 picks: Giants, Rockies, Mets, and we'll be tailing all of your unders and probably bet some more unders over the weekend if the hurricane keeps moving north and we get more storms. So we'll see.
Yeah, just as a reminder, in my article on Tuesday, I also mentioned the system for. I'm not a system better. I make this very clear all the time, but I think there are spots like this final week with these bad teams, and also the final series of the season as teams are wrapping things up, looking ahead, literally looking ahead to the winter. Final series unders, not the first game of the series, but games 2 through 4, games 2 through 5 of the final series since 2005, 10%. 10.4% ROI to the under, plus 78 units for a consistent $100 better. Unders cashing at 57.5%. So look under or pass on Saturday, on Sunday, as we finish out the 2024 regular season. I should say on Monday, too, maybe between the Mets and the Braves, we get a couple more unders in because those will technically qualify for this system as well. And that'll do it for Friday's 15-game slate. For Tanner McGrath, I'm Sean Zerillo. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us that 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Make sure to check out the Action Network Discord. You can find the link in the episode description. Next week, we're going to start bringing you episodes every weekday that we have playoff games, in addition to Monday for that Mets-Braves preview and our playoff series preview. So if there is a playoff game that day, we'll have an episode in your podcast feed that morning. We're also going to preview everything on Monday, as I just said. Thank you for listening to Payoff Pitch. Thank you for listening all season. For myself, for Brendan Glasheen, for Tan McGrath, for BJ Cunningham, and for all of our other experts who join us on this show. We appreciate you listening. Make sure to leave us that 5-star review if you have some time. And thank you for tuning in to Payoff Pitch.